Was JFK Jr.'s death a suicide, a murder, or just an accident? These are the questions that have been on my mind for more than 25 years since his death in 1999. He died July 16th in the summer on his way to Martha's Vineyard, and it's just been the most devastating tragedy, I think, in United States history of politics. And from the Kennedys, like they've had so many tragedies in that family, but losing JFK Jr., I'm sure, was more than tragic. I think he was their next hope for political standings, for power for them. And I think he was their next chance of heading to the White House. And so his death was just devastating, I think, through all. And there's been a renewed fascination with this since now CNN, Ryan Murphy is creating a docuseries about them called American Love Story. And so it's kind of being thrown in the limelight again. So I just wanted to do a deep dive into, the possibilities of why this death happened. It's, like I said, just truly devastating. I think I was in my 20s when this happened. I was just devastated. I couldn't believe, it was 24/7 news coverage of them searching for them over the weekend. All the news were on it. I remember keep running back to the TV. I'm like, have they found them yet? Have they found me yet? In my mind, I was hoping they were like stranded on one of the islands there, that they had a kind of a crash landing, but survived and were kind of waiting to be, discovered on an island. In my wishing that was true. I just thought it was so devastated. What a beautiful couple. So today, again, I want to dive into this. My name is Delania. Please like, subscribe, share, and we're going to dive into what happened to JFK Jr. So the first thing I want to talk about is the speculation that it was a suicide. So there had been many talks throughout the years that him and Carolyn Bessette were having marital problems. They were speculation of divorce. They had talked about it in, I'll go to one of their happier moments here. So this is them at their wedding. They got married in 1994 on a little island. What is it called? There's a little island in Georgia. I think it's Cumberland Island. That's where they got married in September of 1994. And it was just a very small ceremony. It was very top secret. There was only 40 people there, but what a beautiful wedding. They were just a gorgeous, gorgeous couple. So, but they hadn't had, against tabloids, they were very much part of the tabloids. And there was speculation that they were having problems. There is this one video here I wanted to show you guys. It just, very public fight. So this is one of a few that were shown, but I'll just show you this here. It was a great example of how tumultuous their relationship could have been. So just have a watch.
Boyfriend of flirting with another woman at a party. The disagreement turns physical as John appears to rip a ring off her hand here. Supposedly, it was their engagement ring. As John walks off, leaving a shocked Carolyn standing there, she runs up from behind and tackles him, grabbing his neck as he fends her off. Suddenly, they were in each other's faces, screaming at the top of their lungs, and Carolyn didn't hesitate to shove and push him when he tried to walk away.
She stands up for what she wants, and she's not afraid to say no.
Then the pair sit on a park bench while Carolyn continues to scream. She gets up to leave, but then sits again in stony silence, neither of them saying a word. After a while, Carolyn wipes tears away from her eyes. And as they leave the park, John walks a few feet behind her, his head hung low. The couple almost make it back to the apartment they share in Lower Manhattan when the fighting erupts again. John slumps to the sidewalk and buries his head in his arms. He seems to be crying. He looks dejected, defeated. Then Carolyn starts pacing. She extends her hand. You can see John dropping something into her hand. It is believed to be the engagement ring he tore from her finger earlier in the fight. Suddenly, Carolyn grabs for the dog's leash from her boyfriend's hands. He angrily yanks it back. The photographer who took these pictures says she heard JFK Jr. yelling, "You've got my ring. You're not getting my dog, too." And Carolyn reportedly screamed back, "It's our dog." She is finally seen leading the dog away. The couple console each other, but it's short-lived. Carolyn reads him the riot act once again.
She does what she wants, and she's not going to back down.
JFK Jr. finally gets up and reluctantly follows Carolyn. The bickering continues, and then Carolyn bums a cigarette from a total stranger standing on the street. The couple, seemingly exhausted from fighting, finally make up. They embrace on the street, hug, and whisper into each other's ears.
So that's an example there of kind of the tumultuous relationships that they kind of had. I heard from, again, speculation that she was kind of sick. She had anxiety problems with all the photographers. When they met, that she was working as a publicist for Calvin Klein. So she was 5'10", she was gorgeous. Could have been a model, but she decided to kind of go behind the scenes and not be, in front of the cameras. So for her, marrying into this family, it all of a sudden became, she would leave her apartment. There would be photographers there. I think she had anxiety towards that. I heard that she was kind of sick of doing all his family events and stuff like that. She really felt like she had no control over her life. But like I said, it was very they were headed toward divorce. They were actually in marriage counseling as well, I heard. So that was one kind of sad thing on their behalf. They also, he had George magazine, and he had started George magazine, I think in the early, I think it was 92 or 93. He started this magazine, George magazine, with his cousin, Anthony Raswell. And one thing about JFK Jr., I think he was floundering a little bit. He didn't want to become a lawyer, but he went and got his law degree. He failed the bar exam twice. He got it on his third, but yet did not want to be a lawyer. I don't think he really wanted to get into politics. We're sort of kind of hesitant to get into politics. So then he started this magazine, George, with his cousin. It was his mother's nephew. So it was his cousin. They started this George magazine. It hadn't really seen a lot of success yet, and it was costing a lot of the investors a lot of money, and it wasn't turning a profit. So I think he had pressure there as well. So he kind of failed as a lawyer. Or didn't want to be a lawyer. He started this George magazine. It wasn't a success, so he was feeling pressure there. He was having problems in his marriage. It would have been another failure there if that didn't work out. So that's where some people kind of came along the sides of suicide. And I'll go a little bit further when I talk about how it could have been an accident, because there's some things that just don't make sense of why he would have flown that night. But so those are the speculations there about it possibly being a suicide. Another one issue is in this reenactment of their love story. I just wanted to bring attention here to her fashion sense. Some things have been just aside to everything else, but her fashion sense has really been, a huge impact, on society and the style back there in the 90s. And you can see from her style, she's very timeless in her clothing and things like that. So some of the criticisms of the new movie that's coming out is that her fashion doesn't match what the actress matched the fashion kind of icon that she was. And I just saw this one example. It sums it up to a T. So this is actually Carolyn Bessette, how she is and how she dressed. And that was I guess it would be vintage Prada skirt. And this is what they have. The actress playing, just not even, someone said just like the H&M version of Carolyn Bessette. And she obviously wore a lot of high-end designer clothes, but it's just sad. The next thing that I want to talk about is the possibility that it was a murder. Two things I want to bring into attention here. First, this is from the FBI, and there was a handwritten note by JFK Jr. and it got in the hands of the FBI. But essentially, this little red mark down here at the very bottom, where he is calling Joe Biden pretty much a fraud. So I'm not sure where that came from, but yeah, he's very high criticism of Joe Biden. Again, this got in the FBI hands. It was a handwritten note, and it was verified that it was his handwriting. So why was he out now calling Biden a fraud? Question there. Second thing, when it comes down to the possibility of it being a murder, we come back to the whole Clinton and their body count. I did a whole video on that. I can link it at the end, but how Trump sent out a video, I think it was about a couple of weeks ago to a month ago, about the Clinton body count and how he doesn't want anybody to see. But one of the things that they talk about is in 1998, there was a senator in New York. His name was Daniel Moynihan, and he was retiring, so he was giving up his seat. So he announced that in 1998. In 1999, Hillary Clinton said that she was running for that seat. But at that time, the Democratic Party weren't, because they were kind of coming off the cusp of, Bill Clinton and the whole Monica Lewinsky thing, and they weren't like, Hillary Clinton wasn't going to be their first choice. JFK Jr. was just turning, I think he was heading towards 40. He was like the perfect age. He was married. He was settled down. He had that Kennedy clout, and the Democrats really wanted him to take over that seat. He had not yet decided if he wanted to run or be in that seat, but I heard back then is the Democratic Party was the candidate that they wanted to have, but he had not committed to it yet. When Hillary Clinton said she was going to run for that seat, it was 10 days later that JFK Jr. was in this accident. So again, that heads towards murder. Like, if you're going to criticize the Joe Biden, we all see how aggressive Joe Biden was, criticizing him, calling him a fraud, taking that seat from Hillary Clinton, possibility that directs it towards murder. We don't know, but then it comes down to the last thing, which is was it an accident? And I had some questions there because, when I'll bring up, this is the plane that he was flying here. He only had 15 hours on that plane. So this is where I come, like, it was, at the end of the day, hopefully it was an accident, but he only had 15 hours on this plane. My son is training to be an airline with United right now. I asked him many questions, and they've studied this because they study plane crashes, because obviously there's no trial and error when you're in the air. So they study a lot of plane accidents and why they happen. And they really did study this plane accident because a couple of things don't make sense with this accident. One, he had only been flying on that plane for 15 hours, which is not a lot. Two, he did not have an instrument rating, which means that you can't fly it like at night or when there's fog where you can't see, because instrument rating will help you fly a plane if you can't see what's in front of you. And also with the instrument rating, you have more, like, you can kind of fly based on what your instruments are telling you as opposed to what you see. And when they did fly, it was also at night. I think her sister was late coming to the plane, and they were supposed to leave when it was still sunlight out, but by the time she got there, it was dusk. They lost track of the plane, I believe, at 9:40 at night. So when you don't have your instrument rating, I'll show this. So this is here. It shows what it was like that night. It was dark, and you could see the plane is a little bit on its side. So it was also foggy that night, and the moon wasn't out. So they say it was like a lot of disorientation up to where he was via the horizon, and so all he saw was blackness. And that's where the instruments come in. And say, for instance, if you go by the feel and you feel the plane going up, and then you pull it back down, you kind of try to think that you're balanced, but you're not always back to balance. And then you're always trying to correct yourself. And when you're always trying to correct yourself without having that instrument rating to back you up, you're kind of overcompensating. And all of a sudden, and this is what happened to them, it just ended up spiraling down. Unfortunately, it was very sad. So then we come to, was it just a plain old accident? I'm hope to God it's an accident. Some of the reasons I don't think it was a suicide was, one, that he brought his sister-in-law with him. And if it was a suicide, why wouldn't he just do it by himself? So I can't imagine, not that I knew him by any means, but he didn't seem like the kind of guy that if he was going to do something detrimental to himself, that he would bring anybody with him, let alone his wife, and her sister, like those poor parents, lost those two girls in that flight. Just devastating. I just don't think, I think if it was a suicide, he would not have taken those two with him. With regards to it being a murder, yeah, I don't know. There's the conspiracy theories out there that with the Clintons, I truly believe that if he really wanted to run for that seat, he would have beat Hillary Clinton out, hands down. I think he was popular. He was good looking. He was charismatic. He was all that in a bag of chips in my mind. He had the beautiful wife, and she was not overly anything. Like, she was just beautiful. She stood by his side. She was smart, had her own career. She was just a great partner, and a great probably person to be within that family, because she didn't seem to have much baggage on the other side. No one really talked about, who knows, with the internet these days, someone could have pulled up some dirt on her, but she seemed to be pretty clean. So yeah, I think that he would have had the upper hand with Clinton, and that would have changed the trajectory, I think, of her political career, or made it non-existent. If with all that went on with Monica Lewinsky and all that bad press with the Clintons there, and then you have this JFK Jr. come in, kind of the American sweetheart, everybody loved him, he would have wiped the floor with her. I think he would have gone into politics, and I think he would have been very successful. I think he was the Kennedys' next hope for their run for the White House. So I think there was a lot of pressure on him to do that. And it sounds to me like he did have some dirt on Joe Biden as well. So, but then I think, how could it have been a murder? How can you make someone fly that plane? I did hear from somebody who was at that airport that night, and he was a successful pilot. He'd been many hours underneath his belt. So he was there, and he said that he chose not to fly his plane that night. He also said that when he didn't know it was JFK Jr. and his wife and sister-in-law at that time, but he said he saw them over by the plane talking to somebody, and it seemed like a heated conversation, but then it kind of ended, and then he left, didn't see what happened. But then later on that night, he saw the news reports, and he's like, oh my God, that I saw them earlier that night. So who's the guy that I'm talking to? I also heard the flight instructor had offered to fly with him, and he had turned that down. So again, that maybe swings back to, could have been a suicide, who knows? But if it's a murder, how does someone make him get on that plane? Or was he on that plane and someone had done something to the plane, taken some, if he hadn't done his checkpoints, something could have been off. They could have, I don't know, taken something from the plane that would have caused it to spiral. I have no idea, but I guess it could have been a murder. But when it comes down to an accident, that's what it's just such an unfortunate thing, but I do think it was an accident. I think that they say that he was the kind of guy that no one said no to. Probably was spoiled his whole life, never had no. And so when someone said, no, you can't fly, he probably was like, yeah, screw you, I'm going to fly. I've flown this. I'm sure you've flown to Martha's Vineyard many of times. And he's like, well, I know what I'm going. It's just a hop, skip, and jump. It's just over there. And he was just way too confident in his ability. So very unfortunate. What a beautiful, beautiful couple. It's just so, so sad. Let me pull them up again. Just such a waste. It would have been so nice to see where their lives could have taken them. I think that he would have done phenomenal in the White House. I think that he probably would have brought a lot of the book, because he was just a popular person. That's from what I saw. Anyways, that's what I saw. But I was like in my young 20s at that time, so I was pretty naive. But anyways, guys, let me know what your thoughts, and let me know what you're going to think of the movie coming out. There's been other pictures of the actress playing Carolyn Bessette. It's just so unfortunate. It's just, let me bring up that photo again of her in those, such a disgrace. Such a disgrace. Yeah. H&M outfit is that to a T. And I don't think she would ever wear Converse like that unless she was like out walking the dog, but certainly not rushing to her way to work. So anyways, guys, let me know what you think. Are you going to be watching the show? I'm definitely going to watch the docuseries. But do you think it was a suicide? Do you think it was a murder? Or do you think it was just a plain old accident? let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys soon.